Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Today I'm going to talk about something that we very seldom talk about, and that's audio. Now, we purchase TVs with the best ultra-high definition screens and stare in wonder at just how great it looks. And even Netflix will ensure that it looks even better with their HD streaming. But very few people stop to think about the sound. And those expensive TVs, now they've become flatter and flatter, let's be honest, sound awful with those two tiny speakers. And they sound incredibly tinny unless you add an external speaker system. Speaking of which, you could spend a fortune on a nice Sonos speaker setup for your home. But are the compressed MP3 files that you're streaming from Spotify or Apple Music as good as a CD and a hi-fi separate system? Remember those days? Yes, it was a long time ago, but there was an argument that the sound was much, much better 10 to 15 years ago than it is right now. We just accept inferior audio now. Not to mention Bluetooth headphones that can interfere and keep blipping out when walking through a busy train station, for example. So today I want to talk about audio quality, or should I say the lack of it. Have we fallen out of love with good sound? So I wanted to find out more about audio technology, how it's going to impact the leading video streaming platforms over the next few years. So I invited Adam Levinson from GAudio Labs onto the show today to talk about the limited audio capabilities of streaming. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so we can speak with Adam from GAudio. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, it's a pleasure to be talking with you, Neil. Thank you for having me. So I'm Vice President of Business Development at GAudio, and we are an audio technology company. I've been in the audio industry since the early 90s, a very long time, back in the dinosaur era. I had been a musician and got into doing audio work. And, from there, I spent about 2 decades in the video game industry, sort of climbing up the ladder from being a lowly sound designer, making sound effects, all the way to running audio for Activision for several years. And then I went to law school. And from there, I got into business development work and have done biz dev work in sound and music production, in something called middleware technology, audio production plugins, and then spatial audio and streaming audio solutions with GAudio. So it's been quite a journey.
It really has. And when you said that you left the world of audio to go into law, I thought, well, what made him come back in? But if you look back and join up the dots, it's all related, isn't it?
Exactly. As I sort of moved more into like an executive role in the audio world, I ended up doing a lot of contract work. And when I was at Activision specifically, I was doing a lot of work with celebrity talent. Because celebrity talent in video games is, voice recording, it falls into the audio wheelhouse. So I was involved in all that in all the legal aspects of these deals, and I found that was really what I was interested in. Like I really enjoyed that work, and because I had the production background, I was able to bring some perspective into it that the other lawyers just didn't have, and I realized, if I could get the legal background, it could be a powerful combination. So that's why I pursued it.
Fantastic. And here we are in 2018, and like you said, GAudio is a next-generation audio technology company dedicated to enhancing the listening experience of XR and streaming media. But can you set the scene a little and just tell the listeners a little bit more about what GAudio is and what makes it stand out and what makes it unique from everything else out there?
Sure, thank you. GAudio got its start back in about 2015, all those years ago. In VR years, it's like dog years. So it's been seven dog years times 3. The company got its start in spatial audio for cinematic VR. Sometimes that's called 360-degree video. There was this surge of hype and interest in VR back then. And a bunch of companies, including some big players like Oculus and Google, got involved in developing spatial audio solutions. And GAudio is actually one of the very first innovators in the space. And from there, the company has recently branched out into solutions for streaming media. And it may seem like a bit of a leap from VR to streaming media, but in fact, our work in spatial audio sort of led us to requests from our partners and customers saying, hey, what about something that could manage loudness issues in streaming video and music? So one thing sort of led to another. The team is about 25 people. The development and research and development groups are based in Seoul, South Korea, and the rest of us are in California. The core tech team has developed numerous patented technology and includes 7 audio PhDs. So I often like to say that there's a high PhD to human ratio on the team. It's like a deep R&D bench. We have deep roots in research and development, and that's really kind of the persona of GAudio. Our recent customers include Honda Innovations and just recently started working with Naver Corporation. They are a big Korean search engine company. And to your last question, what sort of sets us apart? There are many audio technology companies out there, including some very big ones like Dolby and THX and DTS, these names that are sort of like household names we're familiar with. GAudio is a smaller company, and what sets us apart, really, Neil, is our ability to customize solutions, to work very directly in sort of what they call high touch, a customer service on that level to provide highly specific solutions to what companies are looking for. So that's really the difference.
Now, when I introduced you a few moments ago, you did refer to the 90s as the dinosaur years, and I was around in those years as well. But there is a strong argument that audio was much, much better then. And I've had more than a few heated debates in pubs about listening to music, and how in some ways we've taken a step backwards in audio quality by replacing CDs and DVDs with streaming services. So maybe you can help settle this debate once and for all. I mean, what is the problem with the audio quality in a digital age of streaming services? And also, what are the current audio challenges and trends that are facing leading streaming platforms right now?
Well, there's a lot in that question to unpack, but let me help by sort of settling the argument. Now, I want to say first that I'm a business guy, so I see everything through a business perspective. I'm not a technologist, but I do know a bit. No pun intended, because bits and bytes is really what this whole thing is about. Streaming audio is lower quality compared to CD audio, period. Now, there is an exception, and there can be other exceptions. There's a service called Tidal, Tidal, which is a streaming music service. I'm not sure if it's available in the UK, but it's definitely available in the United States. And that is a lossless compression service that offers CD quality sound. There is generally speaking, pretty massive difference between the quality that comes out of a service like Spotify and CDs. So for example, normal quality, what they call normal quality on Spotify, is 96 kbps, kilobits per second. So that's like the throughput, the data throughput, the bandwidth, so to speak. And that's sort of the representation of the audio within that throughput. That's very, very small compared to 1,411 kbps on CDs. 96 versus 1,411. You don't need to be a technologist to see the difference. And so when you're representing a picture of the audio, so to speak, with that kind of limited resolution, then of course you're looking at a major quality hit. Now, I want to say that these compression schemes that these companies like Spotify use are very sophisticated. These algorithms dive into the audio and pick out the most important parts and get rid of the so-called unimportant parts so that we hear a sort of reasonable representation of the original. But it isn't. the quality of the original. It's not even close. Why is this happening, or why did this happen? Convenience.
Yeah.
Convenience is the driver, because back when the iPod came out, and before that, when digital music players first arrived on the scene, it was all about, hey, I don't know if you remember this, Neil, but people used to brag about how many thousands of songs they had on their their quote MP3 player, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like, one would feel ashamed if you didn't have thousands of songs. I am so glad that I don't hear that from people anymore, because I was never able to compare. But it was all about how many songs can I pack into this device?
Yeah.
And back then it was MP3, right?
Yeah.
So convenience overtook quality, and people who were born in the 90s, the millennials and the Gen Zs, a little bit later on, their sort of listening orientation is towards this kind of lower bit rate, lower quality sound. So you and I, are probably more familiar and more comfortable and more used to CD quality or LP quality.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference. Hopefully that settles the argument. Now, as far as challenges facing the streaming platforms on the audio side, I have to say that I think loudness is currently the most pressing issue. Yeah. Because quality is one thing, right? But if you're trying to ride the volume buttons on your phone, or trying to ride the volume buttons on your remote control, it's really disruptive. And so I think what we need to do now is try to smooth out these loudness issues between programs, whether that's between a song and an ad, or between a TV series and another TV series. I think that's the most pressing issue right now.
Yeah, it really is, especially if you're watching a film with a sound system or something. When the music comes on, it's big and booming, and you're turning it down, and then when the vocals run, you can't hear it. You're turning it back up again. You're just turning the volume up and down throughout a film, aren't you?
So that's more like a dynamic range issue, and issues that come from the movie originally being mixed in a surround format like 5.1 or 7.1 or Dolby Atmos, and then getting what's called folded down to stereo. And I would say what you just complained about is a super common problem that I have too. And that's a little bit separate from loudness. Loudness is like, I just listened to this ad, it was super loud, and now I'm back into the normal programming, and it's way quieter.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is what's called a dynamic range issue, where music is like overpowering and you can barely hear the dialogue. So there's multiple issues that I think need to be addressed. And it's amazing that we're even talking about this in 2018. Like, these problems really, it would seem, should have been addressed. But as new technologies come about, from broadcast TV and now to streaming, these issues kind of raise their ugly heads all over again. So now it's time for the OTTs and the streaming music companies to deal with these loudness problems.
So in your experience then, what companies have recently begun to invest in these new audio capabilities versus those that are falling behind?
So amazingly, again, these streaming media companies are just beginning to take the steps to improve, audio quality, to invest, as you say. On the OTT side, we see Netflix. I think Netflix might have been the first big OTT company to support Dolby Atmos, for example, which is Dolby's new surround sound format. It's like the gold standard now. Amazon Prime just came out with this TV series called Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, which is like an action TV series. That, I believe, is their first debut of Dolby Atmos. So it's just getting started. But then, when you talk about companies that have recently begun to invest in new audio capabilities, I think we should point out that Amazon, Apple, and Google are putting a lot of stake into these smart speaker systems, and I think audio quality is becoming a differentiator because it's a very competitive market. Then we're also seeing soundbar technology. A soundbar is this small, horizontal, like rectangular device that fits under a TV that provides surround sound just out of this bar. Companies like Samsung and Creative Technologies are beginning to really make advances. So a consumer is going to be able to avoid purchasing, awkward 5.1 and 7.1 and Dolby Atmos systems, and is going to be able to have surround sound in the living room just through a simple bar device. So I think that those are the, sort of the most critical advances recently.
Now, it always amuses me when I see people researching what the best TV is that money can buy, and then they get it home, and yes, that ultra-definition picture quality is amazing. It's out of this world, but there is predictably an awful, unlistenable, tinny sound coming from it. So how do you think audio technology will impact the leading video streaming platforms over the next 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, Neil. I have a Samsung Smart TV. It's this technological miracle.
Yeah.
But the two little speakers in the back are, I think my Samsung Android phone has better speakers. So I think quality audio may become a differentiator, because as these streaming services sort of get commoditized, it's going to be about like what makes one stand out over the other. And audio, I think, is going to be an opportunity for these companies. So on the hardware side, again, we're dealing with that convenience and cost versus quality problem. But I think on the hardware side, we're seeing new tech like beamforming, where 3 people can sit on a couch and watch TV, and each can hear the same program in a different language. And there's no interference or crosstalk between the 3 people watching the same thing. Sound bars, like we talked about before, smart speakers. These are the audio technologies that I think are going to impact the streaming platforms in the next couple of years, because it's going to open up the door for quality. And then on the software side, like we talked about, it's loudness management. I think that's where audio technology is really going to impact the streaming platforms. And then, like you alluded to earlier, dialogue clarity. So it would be such a relief, right, to be able to consistently hear the dialogue. So I think loudness and dialogue are the 2 software opportunities.
And are there any other emerging audio technologies in the market today for streaming platforms and beyond that really excite you at the moment? Well, yeah, definitely. So I recently, saw this prescient and sort of amazing news release from iHeartRadio. I don't know if you're familiar with that service in the UK, but they're now using artificial intelligence to smooth transitions between songs. So iHeartRadio is one of the big music streamers here. That is a major step forward. Using AI to blend the transitions and provide smooth transitions between tracks. How brilliant is that? I think we're going to see more of that kind of AI machine learning algorithm tech making its way into our viewing and listening experiences and making the experience a lot smoother. One thing that's even more impressive than that, and that's the fact you can listen to this podcast on iHeartRadio as well. It's shameless self-promotion plug there.
That's excellent. Yeah, iHeartRadio is huge, and you're fortunate to be on iHeart for sure. And hopefully they have this kind of blending for podcasts. Podcasts are so popular now, especially when you have great content like you do. Shameless plug. The other 2 things that I think are sort of emerging that are critical are seamless bitrate switching. So remember earlier in our conversation today, we talked about bitrate and how we have low bit rates because we're trying to fit all this data through a small pipe. Well, now even previously, we had bit rate switching where we can adapt the bit rate based on the viewers or the listeners' pipe to the internet. So if you've got if you're dealing with a bandwidth issue, we can lower the bit rate, to ensure that you're hearing what you want to hear, given that it's at a lower quality. And if you have more bandwidth, then we could open it up and give you full quality. But now we're seeing these highly adaptive dynamic systems that are seamless, where you hear, no transition between bit rate, and we're able to make those adjustments on the fly. And then we talked about this a little bit earlier, dynamic range control, adjusting the dynamic range of the content. So perhaps even customized to your listening environment. In other words, if I'm in a loud environment, I want a smaller dynamic range so I can hear more of the content, even though there's interference from ambient sound around me. So I think it's loudness management, bit rate switching, dynamic range control, and the introduction of these AI features.
Excellent. Now, I know you're a business guy, but I kind of got the impression that you're somewhat of an audiophile too. So I want to take you slightly off topic and hear how you consume your content. So are you a Bluetooth or wired headphones guy, and what kind of equipment excites you as a consumer?
For sure, the thing that excites me the most right now is a new device called Hearables. Oh. I don't know if you've heard of Hearables, but when Apple eliminated the audio jack on the iPhone, everyone freaked out. And then they introduced the AirPod, which were these wireless Bluetooth devices that look very strange. But people, sort of took a liking to them, and they became popular. Smaller companies, startups, and some larger companies like Sony and Bose that you might be familiar with, then took this wireless earbud to the next level and started incorporating features that allow you to manage your audible experience on a day-to-day basis. So if I don't want to hear ambient sound, I can noise cancel that out. At the same time, I can enhance speech so I can hear more of what people are saying, and I can even focus my listening zone, so to speak, on a specific area in front of me. This opens up a whole new area that is referred to and that I call augmented reality audio. So that is definitely what I think is exciting on the Bluetooth side. And I've tried many of these devices. The problem, Neil, is that we're just at the very beginning of these what are called truly wireless devices. So to tell you the honest truth, I am on a day-to-day basis using my wired headphones. Yeah. In fact, even though I have fancy headphones right next to me, the honest truth, again, is that right now I'm talking to you using my Samsung wired earbuds that came with my phone.
Cool.
So, I think there are very exciting things happening on the wireless side, but the wired hardware is still reliable and provides quality, even over cheap earbuds like the ones that came with my Samsung phone.
Fantastic. I do think there is a lack of appreciation and demand for lossless audio among streaming customers. And like you say, we've sacrificed a lot in the name of convenience, but consumers are very aware of the inconsistencies in audio volume across content and sessions on all these platforms. So do you see these attitudes and expectations evolving over the next few years?
Absolutely. I recently wrote a blog post about this because if you think about it, there's this history of audio lagging behind transmission tech and video tech on our favorite platforms. For example, in TV, multi-channel television sound, stereo sound, was adopted by the FCC in 1984. That was 20 years after the first color TV showed up in U.S. households.
Wow.
I was there for that. In the video game industry, same sort of scenario. It took years before audio caught up with stunning advances in 3D graphics. It was pretty recent that we started seeing, AAA video games with really awesome sound. It took a long time for that to happen. Consumers seem to turn their attention to sound quality in the more mature media tech when they're looking for differentiators. Like we talked about before, like these platforms get commoditized, and people are looking for, okay, what, if anything, is better on this specific platform. And audio is one of those things that companies can take advantage of as a differentiator.
It really does seem as a great opportunity there. But looking forward to the future, I mean, what's next for you guys? And how do you see your suite of tools such as 3D audio and seamless integration for 360 video, 3D games, VR, AR, MR evolving, enhancing all aspects of the creative workflow? Because it seems like there's an incredibly exciting future.
There definitely is, Neil. I mean, we use this term next-gen audio or next-generation audio, and it sounds cute, but in fact, it really means something, because the days of channel-based sound, in other words, sound coming out of a speaker setup, those days are waning, and we're now looking at this movement towards what can be called like natural sound that's all around you. I mean, if you think about it, when we're outside or in our day-to-day normal lives, we don't hear sound from two speakers. You don't, it's a completely artificial construct that came up over decades, just based on the convenience of tech that was invented. But honestly, sound is all around you, and there's that next generation movement to deliver that experience in your entertainment, in your media. And so that's pretty revolutionary stuff. Now at GAudio, we're really just getting started in the streaming media space, and we have plans to dive in and develop additional tech beyond loudness, but we're really focused on that loudness tech right now. Looking forward to the future, there's that augmented reality audio that I talked about. AR is very exciting and full of potential. And then finally, I would say that the other opportunity is VR in industry. So if you think about training and simulation, audio is still very much in the early stages in those use cases. So there's an opportunity there as well.
Wow. You've blown my mind today. I've generally enjoyed talking with you. But before I do let you go, can I just ask that you remind the listeners of where they can find you online, contact your team if they've got any questions after our conversation today?
My pleasure, Neil. It's been great speaking with you. So first of all, we have a website, no big shock. However, we are just about to launch a completely redesigned new website, which was, as you can imagine, a major effort. Yeah. So that's coming out soon. You can go to www.GAudiolab.com, GAUDIO lab.com. And then at any time, you can write to support@GAudiolab.com. And actually, that email address goes right to me. So I would be happy to, talk about any interesting points that you want to discuss or any questions. Happy to speak with your listeners.
Well, I've really, really enjoyed talking with you today, because I think over the last few years, while we've all been focusing on Ultra HD and graphics in AAA titles on video games, somewhere along the way, we lost our appreciation for high quality audio as we switch to streaming. So, right. But I do think that's changing now, and there's so many opportunities for next gen audio. So I wish you the best of luck on that journey, and I'll invite you back on in 6 months and let's see how that's going. That sounds great, Neil. Thanks again. Really, really appreciated being here. After we stopped recording the interview, I thanked Adam for his time and just how much I genuinely enjoyed speaking with him today, because we don't talk about audio enough. And this is a podcast. I mean, insert irony here. But thankfully, I think we've put a lot of that to bed today, thanks to Adam discussing with us those current audio challenges and trends that are facing leading streaming platforms and indeed our own personal listening habits. And he really opened my eyes about which companies have recently begun to invest in new audio capabilities versus those that are falling behind. And then, of course, we've got those latest emerging audio technologies that are in the market today and are coming in the future. Not just for streaming platforms. It's an incredibly exciting space. But like I've said several times in this show, we don't talk about audio enough. So I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know your sound setups, whether you listen to vinyl at home, if you've got a home cinema setup, or CDs and hi-fi separates, whatever it is. I want to hear your opinions on audio and how it's evolved over the last 20, 30 years, or if you think it's taken a step backwards. And you can leave me a virtual voice message by going to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you go to podcasts and hit the record button, you can leave me a voice message. But if that's not your thing, just send me a quick email, techblogwriter@outlook.com, or message me on Twitter @NeilC.Hughes, and I'll get straight back to you. What a great episode this one was. I've really, really enjoyed talking about audio in a world that's obsessed with visual imagery. I think it's a lot of food for thought. But before I ramble on too much, thank you all from the bottom of my heart for tuning in today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.